terms of scepticism about environmentalism and about climate change and so on. Mike, you're quite right to say that the science tells us that the climate is being affected somehow, but the body of evidence isn't there that human activity is actually causing that, you know. And I think as socialists, that's something we need to really put the boot into. It's something perhaps within the party that we need to have a discussion about, you know. But
next year's summer school,
sure.
maybe.
Okay.
Getting back to what I also want to say, there's lots of science that's been done. I mean, I'm a university student, and I take a lot of what I hear. Thank God I've met, and I say that without a pun, that I've met the Socialist Party to fill in the gaps of what universities are teaching young minds out there about socialism's collapsed and Russia and all this sort of nonsense that they keep trying to push. But there's lots of not necessarily Western people, but living in the Western world, who I've heard of churches and mosques where people with no money at all are putting like their life savings into envelopes in the hope of getting, you know, God to give them a favour and stuff like this. Like, all right, to some people it's a stupid belief, but these things are happening. These are the effects on people who don't have material wealth and all the rest of it, who, you know, don't have an answer because socialists have not reached them with their idea of get rid of the wage and salary system. They're too busy talking to themselves and, you know, not getting out there maybe strong enough, like some of these Jehovah's Witnesses and other people who are knocking on doors and things like that, putting their message across. You might not like it, but every single one of us has at least met one in our lifetime and had a conversation. But, you know, it's what it does to poorer people, not necessarily who are not as sensible as anybody sitting here. You know, because science has done some terrible things to the same poorer people. It's we or them who experience the harsh end of science, the experimentation of science. And as for not vaccinations, I even have that fear because I can't trust you Westerners. You're always telling us how good you are, but when it comes to the crunch and we start doing a bit of reading and all the rest of it, there's always something somewhere that says you have to be careful when you start talking, particularly with the forked tongue. I'm not saying this, but there is we're not all a loving set of people. There's been a lot of bad stuff done on each side. Some of us don't forget, not just the old soldiers and all the rest of it. Everyone has experienced some terrible things in this lifetime. We've all had the sadness and other stuff, you know?
Yeah, that sort of thought maybe sort of popped into my head while I was putting this together, because it would have been quite easy to sneer at people like the Heaven's Gate group and the Branch Davidians because of, you know, all these bunch of lunatics.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think
as well.
I think what happened with the Heaven's Gate group and the Branch Davidians is quite a sad, tragic story, and it doesn't really. I don't think it helps anyone to sort of be demeaning to their beliefs, even if we disagree with them, because they were looking for something that they needed, and it might have been of some comfort to them, even if we believe that it wasn't the best way of going about it. So, I mean, that's another reason why I avoided using the word cult, because that's got connotations which I don't think are true with the Branch Davidians. You could maybe say for the Heaven's Gate group that's more cult-like, but yeah, I think that's a good point, that people do need to find comfort wherever they can find it, and obviously religion is one way that happens, and I don't think it really helps anyone to sneer at that. You know, we can disagree with it obviously, but not to take the mick.
Actually, I think maybe interest in religion and humankind come from brain activity. And we know that we have a right hemisphere and left. So we have a logical mind and also we have creative mind. So it's natural for human being to go and do some creative search, like religion and or art. So I would say this scriptures and talking about Doomsday is some way artistic expression. And some of us decide to put a label on it, thinking, oh, this is truth and reality, and follow these ways, trapping themselves without and don't expressing like their own artistic abilities. So, and I think this a matter of personal choice, of course, how to express their own artistic abilities, whether going to extremes and believing other people what they believe, or going and discover one's own. So that's what my comment.
So religion as a sort of substitute for art is what you're saying, really. That's how it's sort of, it's the way that sort of somebody's creativity, artistic creativity might manifest itself.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think with the events predicted in Revelation, as I mentioned, when they were first written, a lot of it would have been seen as symbolic, whereas maybe these days people take it more literally than was originally intended. So I think maybe when Revelation was first written, along with other chapters of the Bible, it would have been seen as a sort of a symbolic, artistic myth to maybe learn moral lessons from. And over the centuries, it's been sort of cast in stone by some people, and some people have taken it maybe more literally than was originally intended. Yeah, so I don't know if that sort of backs up what you were saying here.
Any of us who are sat around thinking of socialism as a prediction are fools. I mean, if you think, for example, if you think that Artful Rose is going to win the Newmarket next year, then you just go into the bookies, you put your name down, and you go away and wait. You wait for the telly. You don't sit around in support groups with other people who've also chosen the same horse at Newmarket next year and sort of like have long summer schools about how good the horse is and whatever. You just sit around and wait. And I know people who have taken the same attitude towards socialism. They think that socialism is probably something that's going to happen, but they're buggered if they're going to waste their time worrying about it, which, to be honest, is a rational position. What we should be doing here is, instead of like taking that, we should be treating it only as a means of action, as a group whereby basically we support ourselves. A, to use the resources to tell people about socialism, and B, to support ourselves when we come back and say, well, no, bugger was interested in listening, but yeah, it still makes sense, doesn't it? Rather than us being some sort of predictive organisation. So we should always look towards ourselves as being able to turn around and, instead of making predictions that are just out of the air, to say, well, this is something that we can make a sound statement about, this is what we say we're going to do, and this is what we're going to do, and these are the resources that we need. I mean, in our case, the resources that we need is a much larger majority of the working class than the people that we currently have backing us. A second point as well is about the relationship of what you call left capitalist to predictions of revolution. I think what that is as well is what you were saying about the dialectical relationship of apocalyptic encounters. Basically, in our terms, it's the difference between the forces and relations of production. Now, in these left capitalist people, as we've classically found recently with national liberation movements, and certainly bringing on board the Islamists in terms of the SWP and the SPEC, what you find is that the equation is going the other way. They're trying to find people who are, where the relations of production are actually lower than the force of production. They're trying to find people whose relations are positively feudal towards the world. They don't actually like the world as it is, and that the Trotskyist assumption presumably is all you have to do is blow the world open and they'll get what they want. Whereas our assumption is precisely the opposite, and that's why perhaps we tend to have these ideas of there being a crisis that will help us forward, because that crisis means that our relations of production, i.e. how advanced we are as a working class, become higher than the actual conditions that we find ourselves in. So in order to sustain ourselves as who we think we are, rather than going back to being peasants, we're forced to make a revolution. So that's the kind of thing that looks like a prediction, but you could say that that is part of our theory. I hope that wasn't too rambling.
Some people might pick up the wrong end of the stick and think, oh, we're predicting such and such, but yeah, as you say, it's getting off on the wrong foot to have that opinion.
We've had quite a good discussion. Shall we break for coffee?